Okay, good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us. I know it's for some people it is a busy evening preparing for a big meal, but I don't know. For us Jews, it's like should be a breeze. It's like every Shabbat, every holiday, it's like it's really not a big deal. I was at an appointment today, and I was talking to the nurse, and she said, "Oh yeah, we're preparing for my meal. We're going to do the turkey this way." I was like, "said Yeah, it's going to be a massive meal." I said, "How many people?" So we're going to be 10 people. I was like, "Yeah, oh yeah, that's great. That's a massive meal." Yeah. I was like thinking like 10 people. That's like almost my family, But
Yeah.
we're seven, thank God. You have just a few guests, and that's already 10 people. We've a Jewish big meal. We're talking about we're talking about 20s and 30s kind of meals. That's when we're starting to get like the big meals. But that's for them. So, but I'm glad that you're all here and joining us tonight to learn Torah, because Torah never stops. We always have to learn Torah. So this week's Parsha starts on page 124 in the ArtScroll Chumash, Parshah Toldot. Toldos literally means, Toldah means to say the offsprings. And it starts with Ve'ela Toldos Yitzchak. These are the offsprings of Yitzchak, ben Avram, the son of Avram. Avram Holed is Yitzchak. And it doesn't even say yet the offsprings of Yitzchak and Avram. It just says these are the offsprings of, and then it says Yitzchak, the son of Avram. And then it says Avram Holed is Yitzchak. Avram gave birth to Yitzchak. And then only later is it going to speak about who their offsprings are. It's going to say only in a few verses later, it's going to say that they had children, and Yaakov and Esav are their offsprings. But it doesn't mention anything about the offsprings for a few verses. Right? So the question number one is, why does it say that these are the offsprings of Yitzchak, the son of Abraham, if it's not going to speak about the offsprings till later? Right? And then the other question in this verse is that we have to dissect is that it seems a little redundant. Right? Yitzchak ben Avram, Yitzchak the son of Avram. Avram Holed is Yitzchak. Avram gave birth to Yitzchak. I'm no da. Right? Like if Yitzchak is the son of Avram, so then Avram gave birth to Yitzchak. Why does the Torah feel that it has to express that? We're able to figure that out. I think we got a little insight to ourselves. A little, our IQ is not, maybe so high, but it's enough to be able to understand that if Yitzchak is the son of Avram, then he gave birth to Yitzchak. So why does the Torah go ahead and repeat that? So this verse is telling me that it needs to be understood on a deeper level, right? And we sometimes have these verses, right? Some verses sort of just flow. And as we mentioned, every verse can be dissected, right, and learned a tremendous amount of information. It's Torah. The oral Torah is hidden in the written Torah, and there's so many different things that we can learn from. But some verses, just in its plain way of reading, make sense, and it's sort of part of the flow of the verse. And then you have some verses that when you read them and you just like translate them, like they jump out at you. Okay, what is going on over here? Like this verse, it just too many odd things that seem like, okay, these are the sons of Yitzchak. Doesn't mention them until a few verses later. And then it says Yitzchak, son of Avram, and Avram gave birth to Yitzchak. Like it's being redundant. What is going on over here, right? And we call those verses. Rashi sometimes says pasuk Omer Darsheni. The pasuk tells you to Darsheni, to learn deeper into it. Some verses just talk to you and tell you got to learn into it. So why don't we? So there's many commentaries that expand on this, right? And I just want to say sort of more simple explanation on this verse of understanding what's going on over here, but there are depths to this verse. And the simple explanation, the commentaries say, Ve'ela Toldos Yitzchak ben Avram, these are the offsprings of Yitzchak ben Avram. We need to say that it's laying down the whole parsha, right? This parsha is going to speak about the offsprings of Yitzchak ben Avram, right? About Yitzchak. It's not necessarily going to tell you the offsprings right now, right? But it says these are the offsprings. It means to say in this parsha, in this Torah portion, it's going to speak to you about the offsprings of Yitzchak ben Avram, Yitzchak, right? The offsprings of Yitzchak. And the reason why it's telling you that is because we mentioned this a little bit when we were speaking about Abraham, right? But now is really when it's sort of homing in on Yitzchak, right? There's no more Avram. Avram passed away last week's Torah portion, right? It spoke about a little bit about Yitzchak here and there. It speaks about Yitzchak being born, and then it speaks about, the Akedah, the end of last week's Torah, 2 weeks Torah portion, right? It speaks about a little bit about Yitzchak, last week's Torah portion. Number one, just saying that Avram needed a spouse for him, and then all the way in the end that it says that he buried Abraham, but it doesn't really speak about Yitzchak. This is really the first parsha that it speaks about Yitzchak. But even in this parsha, when it speaks about Yitzchak, it doesn't really speak only about Yitzchak. It's not like Abraham. Yitzchak sort of gets the raw end of the deal in the Torah, right? This week's parsha speaks about Yitzchak a little bit, but then it brings about Yaakov and Esav. We're going to speak about it. It speaks about them selling the Bechorah, the birthright, and then about the blessings and it doesn't really get in the next week's parsha. It readies it up to Yaakov. It speaks about Yaakov going away, and then it sort of stops speaking about Yitzchak. Yitzchak doesn't even get a full parsha about himself. Right? We're talking about Yitzchak, the second of the forefathers, and the Torah doesn't even give a full parsha to Yitzchak. It says for Avram, it has the end of Noach, and then it has the Lech Lecha, and it has Ve'era, and it has Chai Sarah. It has so much. And Yitzchak, and then Yaakov, and this week's parsha speaks about Yaakov a little bit, and the next week's parsha, and then almost all the way to the end of Bereshis, right? All the way to the end, right? It speaks about Yaakov. So why is Yitzchak gets such little is said about him? A few stories here and a few stories there, right? And the commentaries explain because Yitzchak, right? Who Yitzchak was sort of the conduit to bring in Yaakov, right? Now Yitzchak was, we're going to speak about Yitzchak was a sacrifice. He was lofty, he was holy, right? He was sort of a little bit out of our realm, so to speak, right? Yitzchak was sort of a little bit out of our realm. And therefore, we'll see, Yitzchak was sort of in his tent studying all the time. Of course, he had a yeshiva, and of course he was involved with other people, right? And he had interactions, and we can see his servants dug wells, but he was, his personality and his loftiness, he was sort of like a sacrifice. He was like a korban, a sacrifice. His loftiness was sort of more making him sort of a little bit out of our realm, right? And therefore, the Torah is telling us that the stories of Yitzchak, there's going to be sort of one story where Yaakov and Esav are not involved in, right? But the stories of Yitzchak is Ve'ela Toldot Yitzchak. These are the offsprings of Yitzchak. Yitzchak's whole sort of, when we speak about Yitzchak, it's sort of through his offsprings, right? We're not going to talk about Yitzchak right now. It's sort of through his offsprings. We're going to speak about Yitzchak through his offsprings because Yitzchak was on a different level than we could. Right? We could learn from it, but most of his life was sort of beyond our comprehension, and therefore the Torah doesn't go ahead. And we mentioned the Torah only speaks about things that we could learn from. Right? So that answers that idea, and also sort of gives us a little introduction to Yitzchak a little bit, right? And sort of answers this big question of why it doesn't speak about Yitzchak that much. This week's sermon, I might speak about a different direction on this question. I'm not sure, either this or something else. We might, but for now, that's the direction we want to say. So why does the Torah then go ahead and says Avram Holed Yitzchak? Avram gave birth to Yitzchak. Right? We said that's redundant. So Rashi famously says because a lot of people in the generation were saying maybe really Yitzchak is not the son of Avram. Look, he didn't have a baby for 100 years, right? And then Yitzchak was born right after. Remember, the last week's Parshah, Avram had to go after the whole turning over of Sodom. He went down to the Plistim, right? And Avimelech took Sarah in, right? Of course, we know that didn't have any because God struck them down and she didn't have any relations, right? But people were saying, oh, no, maybe really it's Avimelech's child, right? Maybe it's Avimelech's child. Maybe they did have a relation. It's really Avimelech's child. And that's why Sarah gave birth, right? So Avram Holed Yitzchak, Rashi says that it's not only was Yitzchak the son of Avram, but anybody that saw Yitzchak will know that Avram Holed Yitzchak. He was a splitting image of Avram Avinu. And sometimes you have what side is it? He has that, he has Bubby, that's ear, and he has cousin Yemel's nose, and he has whatever, and it's like the baby's like 5 different people. And so sometimes you have a baby, like, oh my gosh, that is a splitting image of their father, right? A splitting image of their mother, right? Sometimes you have a kid, when they start developing and growing, you can see that that's a splitting image of their parent. And it says, Avram Holodis Yitzchak, not only was it Yitzchak ben Avram, Yitzchak the son of Avram, but Avram Holodis Yitzchak means that anybody that saw Yitzchak knew for certain that Avram gave birth to Yitzchak. And why did God do this? Right? The question is, and this is an important thing, why did God do this? Okay, it could be, it was genetic, but the Torah is going out of its way to say that no, God did this on purpose, and no one should be saying this. Okay, so let some people say, talk, who cares? Right? So we always have people that are naysayers, and, so we ignore them, okay, so, they post some posts or whatever, just ignore them. Like, why did God have to go out of his way? Not necessarily it was out of his way, but for why did God have to go ahead and do this to make that Yitzchak look exactly like Avram? And the Torah goes ahead and let us know that no one should have doubt and to say that, oh, maybe it was from someone else. And the commentaries explain something very powerful. It's a tremendous lesson we learn from this. Is that, of course, God didn't have to, and okay, there's some naysayers, and too bad, right? But God didn't want there to be any chil Hashem, a declaration of God's name. God did not want that anybody should have, in the divinity of the forefathers and the Jewish people coming to existence, we couldn't have any crack, any small little naysayer or something that would create some kind of lashon hara, rechilas, right? Evil talk, some bad press, whatever it is, right? In this, and therefore God went ahead and saying, no, I'm making a miracle to make sure that there is nothing like this. And this teaches us something very important, that we have to go out of our way, that when people are saying something bad about the rabbi, about the shul, about the class, whatever, okay, there's some naysayers, whatever it is. No, we have to make sure that whenever something there's always going to be naysayers, and we always have to try to, stop it if we can. But we have to go out of our way to make sure that whenever it's talking about something that's Judaism, really, you need that kosher symbol? Come on, like it has a K on it. It's fine. It just has a K. What does K mean, right? Right? It's vegetables. What's the big deal? Like the rabbis are just doing it to make some money. When, God forbid, people are saying something negative about the rabbis, about halacha, right, about Jewish law, then we have to go ahead. And if we have that, we can't go ahead and make a fight if we don't know them and it's not going to make any difference. But if we feel that we will make a difference, right, we have their ear, or we are someone that's respected, or there's other people, not necessarily the person that is saying it, but there's other people there that respect you. And if you say something that can make a difference, then we have to go out of our way to make sure that we stop this, right? Because the Torah is telling us we cannot have a chil Hashem. We can't have a desecration of God's name. And that is a desecration of God's name. And that's the depth of what the Torah is doing over here, is teaching us. It's not only, oh, okay, cute, God didn't want, no, there's something deeper going on here. And this, it manifests in many different ways. It could be with family and friends, people that might not be as practicing as you are. Or there's really, you're going to stop driving, and so really, you're going to turn off your phone on Friday night, right? Well, what is going to happen if someone needs it? Yes, I'm going to turn off my phone. I'm working on Shabbat. I'm going to turn off my phone Friday night. Right? That's where I'm holding right now. After I light Shabbos candles, right? But yes, so you can't get a hold of me. What's the big deal? Okay, if it's an emergency, we'll figure it out. But before cell phones, we figured it out also, right? Right. So we can't let these naysayers deter us from growing, and also, God forbid, moving other people away from Torah. And that's a tremendous lesson that we can learn from here. Okay, let's move on. We spent some time on this. The Torah goes ahead and tells us in the next few verses, it says Yitzchak was 40 years old when he took Rivka for a wife, right? And she was a daughter of Lavan, right? And V'yetar Yitzchak Lashem, and Yitzchak prayed to Hashem for his wife because she was barren. There we go. Another matriarch was barren. This is a trivia question, right? You don't have to know the answer. How many of the matriarchs were barren? Anybody know? Very good. Right? 3 of the matriarchs were barren. Right? We got Sarah. Sarah was barren. Rivka was barren, and Rachel was barren. Right? Eventually, God made a miracle, and they had babies. I don't want to talk about this too much. Maybe we'll talk about it when we get to Rachel. Right? But just very quickly, right? One of the ideas is because the top Rashi says, right? God loves the prayers of the righteous, right? And therefore, He wanted them to pray more and to bring more prayer into the world. That's not right. Just because God loves their prayers, so why did He make them barren? It's a good question. I'm not getting into that right now. Right? Maybe we'll talk about it more by Rachel. Right? But that's one of the reasons. And the other reason is that we should always remember that every birth is a miracle. Right? We only start thinking about it's a miracle when it was a dangerous birth, or someone, oh my God, someone had a baby after, married for 15 years. Mazel tov. It's a major mazel, and it is a miracle. Right? But really, every birth is a miracle. Every time someone has a child, right, even if it goes natural and everything seems to be going in the right direction, it is a miracle, right? So God wanted us to remember that the Jewish people's whole existence was a miracle, just like everything was a miracle. So He made the matriarchs barren. Again, I don't want to talk too much. There's other answers. There's deeper to go into this, but that's just quickly some ideas about this, right? But what I do want to talk about is, it says that Yitzchak prayed, right, for his wife, right, and she was Akara. Vatahar Rivka vayetar lo, and God answered him. Vatahar Rivka, Eastern Rivka, his wife, gave birth. So the commentaries say that vayetar lo, He answered him. So of course He answered him. The pasuk verse says that He's the one that prayed. So it says vayetar Hashem, and God answered. So Rashi quotes and others quote, right, that they were both praying. Rivka was praying in her corner, and Yitzchak was praying in his corner. And God answered his prayer, right? So the commentaries want to know, why not her prayer? Like, what was wrong with her prayer? We're talking about Rivka, a matriarch. Right? What was wrong with her prayer? So the commentaries say, because there's one difference between Yitzchak and Rivka. What was the one difference between Yitzchak and Rivka? Yitzchak was a son of a righteous person. So he had the merit of his forefathers when he was praying, of Avram Avinu and Sarah. Rivka, who was Rivka's family? Lavan was her brother, swindler, right? Her father was Besuel, who was a swindler, and we spoke about last week that he tried to even kill Eliezer, idol worshiper, right? Swindler, bad people. So Rivka didn't have any, we call it schus avos. Having the family helping out with the prayer, right? So therefore, God answered his prayer and not her prayer, right? So the commentaries want to know, okay, that's beautiful, but like, isn't it so much greater that Rivka came from very nice Yitzchak, right? He came from a family, so of course he became great, like, of course, like sometimes you look at some rabbis, of course you're going to become, your father's a rabbi, your grandfather's a rabbi, like, of course you're going to become a rabbi, of course you're going to be religious, right? Your whole family's religious, like, well, and look, Rivka came from a family, and she changed, and she became religious, and she not only became religious, she became one of the matriarchs, a tremendous relationship with God. So isn't that worth much more? Like, isn't that a greater schus? Isn't that a greater worth to be able to be answered? And this really opens up a whole conversation, which we don't have time for today, but it opens up a whole conversation about that whatever position we're in, right? We have the opportunity to grow, and every position is also a challenge, right? There's not one person that has really a greater challenge than another person, right? And it's really an interesting discussion of coming from two different sides, someone that born what we'd call today religious, and someone that's not born religious, and each one's journey and what their challenges are, and who has a greater reward and who doesn't have a great reward. But to answer this question, the commentators say that it's not saying that Yitzchak was greater than Rivka. That's not what it's saying. They both had their challenges, and Yitzchak had his challenge, right? Do you think it's easy to follow your parents' footsteps? Which child wants to be like their parent, right? Come on, right? Do you want to rebel against your parents? Maybe when you get older, you said, "Oh, right, my parents were smart; they knew what they're talking about." Right, but most they're not necessarily, or you very nice. You grow up religious, but there's the world out there looks so enticing, right? Looks so much to do, And I think I mentioned the story once, but when I was a teenager, all right, a few years ago, right, when I was a teenager, my parents had parents used to have a lot of guests over to their house, and they had some college kids. And one time, I remember we had this college kid that came pretty often. One time, he announced at the table that he stopped eating shellfish. Right, stopped eating shellfish and pork. That's. We said, oh wow, that's great. That's a great level, right? He eventually actually became fully religious, right? But that's where he said that's great. And I remember I threw out to him a line, right? Sort of as I said, the Talmud tells us the Malkum Shabal Tshuva Omed Ein Sadik Gamar Yachalamabo, in a place where someone that repents, someone that comes closer to God, right, where he stands in the heaven once they go up to heaven in the heavenly court, right? A tzaddik gomer, a righteous tzaddik, can't even come into that place. Means to say that in the heavenly, the heavenly heavens or court or closeness to God, right? Someone that comes back and is about tshuva, right? That is so beloved by God, right? That even someone that was righteous their whole life can enter into that sort of courtyard, so to speak. So I said that, like sort of giving a compliment. He looks at me, he said, thank you, right? I translated for him. He said, thank you. He said, but I'll be honest with you. I'm more amazed by you. I said, why? Like, I grew up religious. I went to Seidat Torah, which we learned Judaic studies in Yiddish until 5th grade. Like, we didn't learn it in English, right? I started learning Talmud in 5th grade. So like, why? Right? So he said, because, I didn't grow up religious. I've done everything, right? I did everything, right? And I don't know if, I see there's nothing to it, right? I'm in college and I've done everything, right? I've tried everything and I don't get any satisfaction out of it. It's fun or whatever, but you see all these lights out there. You see all these things that seem to be exciting, all these advertisements, all these things, and you still refrain from doing that, right? For me, I feel like that will be harder. Right. So I said, thank you. Okay. I hear. Good point. Okay. Pat on my back. Right. But the idea is that it's not necessary. And again, the point is that we can't say, oh, well, that person has it easier. Right. Oh, look, God. We all have our challenges. We all have wherever we're placed. We have to take the next step and get closer to God. Right? And sometimes and the other thing is, you feel, okay, I'm religious, I'm good, I keep Shabbat, and I learn Torah, and I learn Talmud, and I put on my tefillin, and so, okay, I'm good. And you have to elevate yourself. God put you here, but then you have to grow higher from where you are. And that's not necessarily easy either, right? Because you feel like, okay, I'm doing what I need to be doing, right? But if you didn't grow religious, and then you realize that there's different things that you might have to do, so then, okay, there's room to grow, right? So, but if you grew up religious, it's easier because you're doing it, and you learn Torah and you know it. But if you didn't grow, I haven't changing my life, changing so many things, it's so hard, right? Changing everything that I grew up with, all my friends and my family, and it's so foreign to me. I haven't learned it. I have to learn so much. We all have different challenges, and that's the point that I'm trying to bring out. The Torah is not saying that Rivka or Yitzchak were greater than each other. They both were great because they both overcome the challenges that God gave them, and each one from their level. One that grew up religious and had a father of Avram and mother of Sarah, and one that had a brother like Lavan and father like Besuel. Right? They both accomplished what they accomplished. So what was the tipping scale? At the end of the day, Yitzchak's father was also great. So the merit of Yitzchak's father sort of tipped the scale and then gave him, God said, okay, because of the merit of his father, right, I'm going to listen to him, right? But it's not that saying that one was greater than the other. And we have to remember that we all, it doesn't make a difference if you're religious, you're not religious, we all have the schus of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. If we open up the Amidah, when we start, we say, Elokei Abraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov. So we thank God, we all have it. It doesn't make a difference if you're religious or not. We all have the merit of our forefathers. So we can't say, well, I didn't grow up. No, we have the merit of our forefathers, right? We all have it. If you open up the Amidah, that's what we're saying. What else are we saying? Oh, the God of Abraham was saying like history in our prayer? No, we're invoking that we are the descendants of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and God, we want to use the merit of our forefathers. So we all have that. right? And that's what the Torah is teaching us over here. But again, it is a tremendous lesson for us to learn, to remember that by the commentators explaining that the difference was because of the merit of the forefather. We'd say that Abraham, Yitzchak, and Rivka were both on the same level because they both accomplished what they needed to overcome. Yitzchak wasn't greater than Rivka because he grew up religious, and Rivka wasn't greater than Yitzchak because she didn't grow up religious, she became religious, right? They're both, because if you accomplish what you need to accomplish, if you overcome your challenges from what God gives you, from how you were born, or the opportunities that you have as you grow, meeting different rabbis, meeting different opportunities, coming into new family, meeting new people, all those are different opportunities. If you grab those opportunities by the horns and say, I'm going to utilize them, and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, and we're all on the greatest level possible, right? And that's what the Torah is teaching us over here. Okay, let's move on. So God answers a prayer, and it says, "Vayisatru Abanim b'kirba," and we're really like not going very far today, but we'll skip a little bit soon. Don't worry about it. Right? Vayisatru Abanim b'kirba, right? And the children sort of were kicking in the stomach. Right? What do I need this? So Rivka didn't know about pregnancy pain, labor pain, like, well, all the kids are kicking, right? So why do I need this? Right? Okay, so I should just be quiet because I'm a man, right? I shouldn't be talking about this, right? I understand that, but it has to be that there's something deeper going on over here. The commentaries ask this, right? And the commentaries explain that it was a unique kind of kicking, because what does she do? But she goes, Lidros Hashem, she goes ask God. Right, she goes to the house of Shem ve'Aver, right, of Aver, the yeshiva, and she goes and asks him what to do. Right, so it says that when she passed by a prayer house, like a Beit Midrash, it felt like the baby was trying to run out. Right, and then when she passed by a house of idol worshiping, it felt like the baby was trying to run out. Right, so she said, like, what's going on over here? Like, make up your mind, right? So what is the answer? It says, oh, snake going with you have two different nations. You have, as we know them, Yaakov and Esav, right? You have twins in your stomach, right? They didn't have ultrasound, so she didn't know before that she had twins. There's snake going with there's a prophecy. You have two children, and they're both going to be great nations. And one is gonna be close to Hashem, and one's gonna be not. And that's the explanation that one is trying to run out when passing by a house of prayer, a house of learning, right? And that was Yaakov, right? And when passing by a house of idol worshiping or other things, that was Esav. Oh, so all of a sudden she was okay. So the commentaries want to know that, 1 second. Okay, so at least she knew that, it wasn't one kid, but why was she okay with it? She knows she's going to have a child that's going to not do good things. So why was she okay with it? Right? She should have like, no, I don't want this. Like, why when she thought it was one kid, she's like, Lamazet, why do I need this? Right? Now she was like appeased, right? Of course she wasn't happy to know that she's going to have one child that wasn't going to be good, right? So I don't remember where I saw this or where I heard this from, but I remember the way it was phrased. The answer was that Rivka could not handle a kid that didn't know what he wanted, right? A mixed up kid, right? One day you want this, one day you want that. Well, this is good, that's good. We're all good. 2 + 2 is 5, right? 1 + 1 is 3. We're all good. Everything's okay. Right? Judaism, Christianity, Islam, this and that, whatever pronoun you want to call it, everything's okay. We're all okay, right? I could run out to the house of prayer, and I could run out to the idols. We're all good. Lama Zaunochi. That's not good, right? You have to have you have to know what you believe in. You have to know what is something that you believe in. Right? I can't handle that. Okay, I know one of my children is going to serve out. At least he knows what he's doing. He has his thing. I disagree with him. Hopefully we could try to, change his way, right? But there's what to work with when someone knows what their direction is. Even if it's serving idols, even if it's serving a different God or something else, right? It's not doing the right thing, but they have their direction. They know what they're doing, and then there's something to work with. But if someone, no, it's okay. You can't talk to them. You can't work with them. You can't discuss anything with them because they don't believe in anything. They just believe in nothing, and therefore nothing's nothing, and everything's okay, and everything's not okay, and everything's bad, and everything's good, right? And we're good, and we're bad, and we're here, and we're there, and I'm it, and I have to know, and we're all over the place. She said she can't handle, right? And that's something that we have to remind ourselves, especially in our generation, where this is something that's, no, we're all good and we're all yes, we're not. Doesn't mean to say I know what I believe and I believe in it. It doesn't mean to say we have to be disrespectful to other people. That's not what I'm saying. God forbid. And please remember that. We have to be respectful for every human being. It doesn't make a difference what they believe or if they're confused. Respect to other people is important, and how you talk to other people is important. But you or myself, what I believe in, right? We have to have a direction of what we believe in. We have to believe in something. We have to give over to our kids and to our community what we believe in. It can't just be wishy-washy and everything's okay. That's not the Torah way, and that's not even a healthy way, right? That's not a healthy way. Again, that has nothing to do with respecting other people for what they believe or what they don't believe, right? Or what they don't know what they believe in, right? Respecting every human being as a human being, that is important no matter what. But what we believe in, or what we're educating, if someone's going to ask me what I believe in, yes, I believe that that's wrong. The Torah tells me that's wrong. I'm happy to talk to you, and I'm not going to argue. I'm not going to argue with you if you don't want to talk about it, and I'm not going to look down at you because who am I? God, when you come to heaven, you'll deal with God. I'm not God. I can't judge you, right? But you want to know what I believe in? I'll tell you what I believe in. You want to know what the Torah says about it? I'll tell you what the Torah says about it. But one has nothing to do with the other of oh, you're being proud, you're being this. No, I'm not. I'm just telling you what I'm entitled to be. I'm entitled to believe in what I believe in, and that's what Rivka was saying over here. Okay, let's move on. Where are we? Okay, so we're moving on. It says that they both came out, right? One came out Domi, red, right? And that was, they called him Esav, full of here. Esav came out full of here. He came out first. And then Yitzchak came holding to his ankle, right? And they called him Yaakov. And Yitzchak was 60 years old when he got, so remember, this is 20 years that just passed by now, right? Because they were 40 years old when they got married, right? And this is 20 years later, he was 60 years old when they had the baby, and that's how we know that she was a akara. She was barren because it was 20 years till she had. So a little shorter than Rivka, Sarah. Sarah was 90, right? So I guess sort of the barren was going down a little bit, right? But he was 60. So Rivka was however old she was. I don't want to get into that disagreement. We don't know exactly how old. The different opinions. But it was 20 years later that they had a baby. So now it says like this. It says, the children got older. Right? It says there were 13. Esav was, your dad's side, Esav was a hunter, right? He went out into the field. Yaakov Ishtam Yosef Olam. Yaakov was a Ishtam, what we call simple, right? The four sons in the Agada, right? We have Chacham, right? Rasha, Tam, we call him the simple son, right? So Yaakov was simple. Yaakov was anything but simple, right? Ishtam Yosef Olam, sitting in the tent. So what does it mean, Tam, over here? So he was pleasant. Right? He was pleasant. He wasn't simple, right? He was wholesome, right? He was wholesome. He was pleasant. And Yosef Aholim means to say he sat in tents. He learned Torah. Right? That's what he did. He learned Torah, right? And that's what Yaakov was. And we're not going to get into Yaakov and Esav today. We don't have time. Maybe next week or the following week, right? We're not going to get into that. But that's Yaakov and that's Esav. What I do want to talk about is a very interesting verse 28 on page 126. Right? So it says, V'yav Yitzchak is Esav. Yitzchak loved Esav, Kitzayid b'fiv, because he fed him. Right? He fed him. I guess we always know the way to a man's heart is food, right? Right? Give a man a good steak and a beer, and you got him. Right? So he gave him food. Right? Rivka oves Yaakov. Rivka loves Yaakov. So the commentators want to know, like, what was going on? This is an important thing. Well, yeah, this is a lot of, unfortunately, there's a lot of commentaries that misunderstand this whole verse, try to take out their own sort of things out of this parenting and this and that, and and then Yitzchak was just blinded. There's a lot of different very good directions. I just want to speak about the Seporna, one of the commentaries. He lived, I think, 1300s. Right? He says this a few words, but from his few words, you can understand a very deep idea of what was going on over here. Right? Yitzchak was no fool. Yitzchak knew what Esav was. right? And when he gave him the blessings, we're going to talk about this also. We'll just incorporate it now, right? When we get to the blessings, we'll incorporate it now, right? Yitzchak knew who Esav was. He knew that Esav was, going out and doing not the best things, and we're going to see in a minute, it says that Esav came from the field. It says that day he did the three cardinal sins, right? He had relations with a married woman, he killed, and he served idol worshiping that day. Yitzchak knew that Esav was not necessarily the best person, right? He didn't know maybe to that extent, right? But he knew that Esav was not Yaakov, and he knew Yaakov was, the better son, right? So why does it say that Yitzchak is Esav? Yitzchak loved Esav, and what does it mean b'tzai b'fiv because the food was in his mouth? What Yitzchak we just spoke about, the Torah barely talks about Yitzchak because Yitzchak was like a sacrifice. Yitzchak was so lofty. Well, Yitzchak for a few pieces of meat would oh yeah, Esav, he's a good one, right? Like for a few pieces of meat, we're talking about someone that was brought as a sacrifice, willing to be a sacrifice on the altar, right? He realizes the materialistic world is secondary to or nothing compared to the spiritual world. So what does it mean that he got blinded by that? Like, what does that mean? So the commentaries explain, and again, there's many different ones. We're going to sort of take this upon his direction that he adds in v'yitzchak gam oev. It's part of the oral. It's not the verse doesn't say that, but he adds in those words v'yitzchak gam oev is Esav. Yitzchak also loved Esav, and what does that mean? And to say that, of course, Yitzchak loved Yaakov, of course, and they probably learned together. Yeah, they probably learned all the time together. But what Yitzchak didn't know about the prophecy that Rivka got, and for whatever reason, God hid it from Yitzchak. So Rivka didn't reveal it to Yitzchak, because if God did not reveal it to him, so it's not her place to reveal, the same way we spoke about last week when God told Avram about the bringing Isaac as a sacrifice. You couldn't reveal it with Sarah, right? Because God didn't reveal it to her. So I guess God did not want it, for them to know. Right? So therefore, Rivka did not reveal this prophecy that there's two separate nations, or one's going to be good and one's going to be bad, and when one's up, one's down. Right? She knew about this prophecy, and Yitzchak did not know about this prophecy. So what Yitzchak was trying to accomplish that at least Esav would have some part of the future of the Jewish people. What he thought was that he could make Esav into what we call the Yisachar Zvulun, right? The two of the tribes of Yaakov, Yisachar and Zvulun. And Yisachar, right, was the learned people, and Zvulun was the businessman. And we actually have nowadays, it's called the Yisachar and Zvulun contract. I don't know if you guys know about this. There's the Yisachar and Zvulun contract where Zvulun, right, they actually supported the tribe of Yisachar, and Yisachar, the people of Yisachar learned all the time. And it says that Israel and the business people, since they supported them and they made a contract about this, that they got the same reward of the people that, of course, they had to keep their mitzvahs and they had to have their own little learning, but their primary thing was business. They weren't learned as much, right? But they got the reward of the people, the children of Yisachar, learning because they supported them. And nowadays we have, it's in the Code of Jewish Law, something called the Yisachar and Zvulun contract, where businessmen will make a contract with someone learning and say, we will support you, right? But we're going to get the reward of your learning because we can't learn all day and we don't have that ability or whatever it is, right? We didn't grow up that way, or we did, but we just can't, right? And they sort of make that contract, the Yisachar and Zvulun contract, right? Where you're supporting this individual of learning and you get the reward, right? To the extent that we don't have Yisachar Zvulun contract, but when you support people learning Torah, a kollel, a Beis Yaakov, right, elementary school, if you support people learning Torah, you get that reward of them learning Torah, right? You get a double mitzvah. Not only do you get the mitzvah of tzedakah, you also get the reward of those people learning Torah, right? So it sort of combines the two. Right, and we could elaborate on this at other parshas, so it'll come up later, and maybe by Yisachar and Zvulun we'll elaborate on this more, right? But the commentators explain that that's what Yitzchak really wanted for Yaakov and Esav. He thought Esav would be imagine inside the fifth. He fed him, means to say, like the same way he fed him, right? He'll feed Yaakov and he'll take care of Yaakov. And therefore they could sort of be partners, right? And that's it. Gamma, he also loved Esav. He tried to bring Esav in and try to, cultivate him and say, look, you make good food, or you do this, your business, you hunt, you this. So you support Yaakov, and Yaakov will learn, and you guys will be a good partnership. And that's why Yitzchak also wanted to give Esav the blessings, because all the blessings were blessings about the materialistic world of having materialistic the good business and other things. There were blessings of the materialistic world. So he thought Yaakov doesn't need it. Yaakov will be learning all the time, but Esav will have it. But Rivka knew about the prophecy, right? So therefore, Rivka Ov is Yaakov. Rivka loved Yaakov. Of course, as a mother, she loved Esav, right? Of course, right? And she was the only one Esav trusted. He kept all his important belongings with his mother. He didn't trust his wives even. Right, but means to say, it means to say love, means to say that there's a direction, there's a future. Right, Rivka knew that about the prophecy, and therefore she only loved Yaakov in that way. Right, and therefore later when she found out that Yitzchak wanted to give Esav the blessing, she said, "This cannot happen because they're not going to be partners, and then we're not going to have the whole Yisachar Zvulun. We're not going to have any of the descendants of the Jewish people having the blessing of the materialistic, and we need that in the Jewish people because we're not all people that can learn all day, right? And therefore, right, she made sure, and that's part of the whole trickery that needed to happen. And again, maybe we'll have time to talk about that today, right? But that is part of why Rivka was so insistent on making sure that Yaakov got the blessing. So it sort of gives a whole new perspective on this whole back and forth, the Rivka and Yitzchak, right? Of course, Yitzchak did not get his eyes pulled, and Rivka was not a mean mother. She actually, Esav trusted her more than anybody. But she knew about the prophecy, and Yitzchak didn't know about the prophecy. And what Yitzchak was trying to accomplish was to make Esav at least part of the family, sort of say, but there was a prophecy that there wasn't going to happen, and therefore it didn't work out that way. Right? And that's what it means over here that Yitzchak loved Esav. It's a deeper concept, and after the class, if you want to ask more about it, I'm happy to discuss more. All right, but I do want to try to move on. Okay, so we're really behind now, but it's okay. And we're doing some great stuff today. Then the next part of it is that Yaakov was making lentil soup, right? And Esav came in from the field. He said, give me some food, halitenina, right? Give me some food, right? I'm hungry, I'm going to die. So he said, okay, but sell me the birthright. So he said, why do I need this birthright? I'm going to die anyways. And Yaakov said, swear to me. He swore to him, and he sold Yaakov the blessing. And the Torah says, Vayizav Esav b'chor, and Esav embarrassed, disgraced, right? The b'chor, the firstborn, right? And Yaakov got it, right? So sort of, I don't know if we're going to have time later to get to it, but that's really, again, Yaakov didn't know about it. Yitzchak didn't know about this. So really, Yaakov is not swindling Esav out of anything because the blessing was supposed to go to the firstborn, right? So he was really taking what he was getting, right? But since his father didn't know that, he sold it, right? So you have to do it in a more trickery way, right? To make this happen. Again, there's other deep things that are going on there. I don't know if we'll have time to talk about it, but just remember that there's deep ideas here, and not everything's always as face value as it seems. Right? So just one thing, Rashi says that why would he say I'm going to go die? Right? He says because the birthright, again, originally birthright was the people that are going to be serving in the temple, right, and bringing sacrifice. And there's so many laws. Esav knew about the laws. Esav wasn't learned. He was learned, and he knew about the laws. He said there's so many laws. I'm probably not going to be able to keep all the laws. I'm going to forget the laws. I'm going to be busy, other things. I'm probably going to die because some of these laws, if you do certain things the wrong way, actually the punishment is death. Right? So therefore, why do I need this? I'm probably going to mess up anyways, right? And therefore, I'm going to die, so I don't need this. So the commentaries ask, okay, so that's a good point. Esav is being realistic. Why is that considered that he embarrassed the Bechorah, what was the big deal about it? He made a good point. He knew himself. He knew that he won't be able to do it, right? So therefore, he got rid of it before it was going to create a problem. So the commentary, Moshe Feinstein and others say something so powerful. He says, because if God gives you something, then you have the wherewithal to accomplish it. And Esav was just being lazy, and Esav did not believe in himself that he could do this. And that's where he didn't feel enough respect for the Bechorah. He didn't see how important it was. If he realized how important it was, he would have made every effort to make sure that he knew all the laws and to keep all the laws and to do it. And that's what it means that he embarrassed the Bechorah and he didn't show the proper respect. Because if he would have had the proper respect, he would have made sure that he did it. He just went the easy way. It's too much. I can't do this. I don't know. Too many laws. It's too much to learn. Too much of this. I can't do this. No. You do have the ability to do it. Each one of us, if God gave us these laws, if God gave us these things, right, it doesn't make a difference when you start learning, when you start doing. You have the will within to learn it and to be able to do it. It might take 20 years. It might take 5 years. It might take 2 years. But by studying it and working on it, that's what God wants from us. And not just saying, it's too much. I can't do this. Right? That was the mistake of Esav, and that's why the Torah says for all eternity that Esav embarrassed, right? So disrespect for the birthright. Okay, we're going to go through the next part very quickly because we don't have time for this, right? But the next chapter speaks about Yitzchak. Again, that has nothing to do with Yaakov and Esav. Sort of a little part that it speaks about Yitzchak, and but without Yaakov and Esav, he goes. There's another famine. I guess there's bad times in Canaan. Then there's another famine. And he goes to Plishtim. God tells him, you're not allowed to leave this land, right? Do not go to Mitzrayim, and you can't leave Eretz Yisrael. Why couldn't Yitzchak leave Eretz Yisrael? Because the commentary said because Yitzchak was a sacrifice, as we spoke about before. And a sacrifice cannot leave the Holy Land, right? The sacrifice has to be in the Holy Land. So therefore, Yitzchak was not allowed to leave the Holy Land. He was on such a spiritual level that he could only retain that high level of spirituality in the land of spirituality, which is the Holy Land. And I don't want to go deeper into this right now. Right? And then it speaks about that, again, they asked about his wife, and he said to my sister, again, the whole thing, we're not getting into that. And then it says that they built, that Yitzchak lived in Gerar, right? And then it says that he made different, wells. Right? He made different wells. And the verse goes back and forth about interaction between Yitzchak and Esav, and Yitzchak being prosperous, right? And then it says that Vayikinu, they were jealous of him, right? And then they went and filled up all his wells, right? So just an important thing to remember that whenever, and God, we're not saying that that's what Yitzchak was, but it's important to remember that when we are prosperous, we have to try to keep it hidden. We can't flaunt we can't flaunt it amongst the non-Jews, because when we start flaunting our wealth or our influence, or in a way that's not respectful, or we have to do things to ensure the safety of the Jewish people, we have to do that. But we just flaunt it and say, oh, we're like, and we're like. Then they start getting jealous of us, and that's when anti-Semitism happens. When we keep things a little quieter and we stay together with our Jewish brethren, and we don't flaunt our wealth, right? So again, it doesn't always mean it's not going to happen, but it's definitely a safer thing. The Torah tells us that that's when when he became wealthy, they started being jealous of him. Let's skip along again, and then after that, it says so they stuffed up his wells. It says the servants of Yitzchak, we're on page 130 now. Verse 19, and these verses are very interesting. I'm just going to talk about it very quickly. It says, "Vayichbaru Abdi Yitzchak," the servants of Yitzchak dug in the Nachal, in the ravine. Vayimtzu sham be'er mayim chaim. They found a be'er mayim chaim, and vayivru, but they found a well of water. But the servants of Gerar, right? They fought with Yitzchak. They fought with Yitzchak about the thing. He called the Be'er Asek. Asek means to say like a back and forth. They had a back and forth about it. They dug another one, and on that one they also fought about, and they call it Sitna, right? From Sinna, from hatred, right? He left there and he dug another one, and it says over there, it says there was no fighting anymore. It says God, spread out for us, gave us ample space, and it was fine. And then it says he went to Beersheba. So just very quickly, these three, why is the Torah going and elaborating on these three be'ers? Like really, again, we spoke about, barely speaks about Yitzchak, and all of a sudden it's talking about the wells that Yitzchak dug. Like really, like couldn't find anything better to speak about Yitzchak. But Yitzchak was no youngster; he was 150 something when he died, right, or 60 something. I don't remember the exact age, right? But that's sort of like the only thing that it could speak about Yitzchak by himself without Yaakov and Esau being involved, or Rivka being involved, about the wells that he dug. Right? Like, there's nothing else they could speak about. It's a miracle that he did, or some other interaction, or something like that. That's what it could speak about. And it's a good question, right? It's a good question, and there's many different answers, right? But one of the answers that are given, and just to bring it out from these three wells, is that there's depth of learning of how to, for the future of the Jewish people and exile. How we deal with certain things in exile and interaction with our non-Jewish neighbors, right? We learn from these verses of Yitzchak. It wasn't necessarily the wells that he dug, but his interaction. And I just want the Nachmanides elaborates on these three wells that he dug. And he says the Torah is very, very interesting. He calls each one a little different. One he calls it Asek, one he calls Sitna, and the last one he calls Rechavos, right, which means to spread out, and that's the one they didn't fight. Well, what's the Torah telling us? What's Yitzchak telling us? He says actually there's sort of a prophecy for the three Beis Hamikdash that were built, right? And two that were built, and one that, God willing, will be built speedily in our days. He says that the Be'er, a well, represents water, which is life, right? The Beis Hamikdash was a source of life, of spirituality for the Jewish people. And therefore, he said the first one, right, they fought with them and they called it Asek. Asek means to say like they're busy, right? There was a conversation back and forth, this, that. So that's referring to the first Beis Hamikdash. The first Beis Hamikdash was destroyed because of the three cardinal sins, right? Because of Avodah Zarah, idol worshiping, Hilu Arayas, adultery, and Shvichas Damim, and killing. And also it says because they did not bless the Torah, right? They did not learn Torah with a blessing. They might have learned Torah, but they didn't do it with a blessing, showing respect for the Torah. It said that's Asek. It means to say people were busy with each other, right? They were busy with each other, but they were busy with each other by just doing whatever they wanted, right? They didn't necessarily hate each other. They dealt with each other. They learned, right? But, you got in my way, I'll kill you, right? I want your wife, I'll take her, right? I want to serve some idols, I'll serve some idols. People were just busy doing their thing, right? It says that's what the first Be'er was. It represents the first Beis Hamikdash. The second Be'er, the second well, represents the second Beis Hamikdash, which is Sitna. Sitna, we know, is baseless hatred, right? Sinat Chinam comes from the same thing, baseless hatred. And he said that the second one was just for no reason. They just came. They had he gave them the other well. They had wells. But they just want to fight with them because they wanted to fight. And we know that the second temple was destroyed because of basal hatred, because they were just fighting with each other. It was infighting. They couldn't get along. They might have not killed anybody. They might not have served idols, right? But they had no respect for one another, and they kept on fighting with each other. And that represents the second Be'er, the second well. And the third one, God willing, the Beis Hamikdash, the final Beis Hamikdash will be built. That's Rechavos. It means to say there's plenty of room. Rechavot, it's spread out. There's room for everybody. Everybody's getting along, right? Everybody respects each other. Everybody respects each other's property. Everybody respects each other in the sense of not getting involved, but also every person has their own space. And Rechavot also is Hashem, recognizing that God gave us everything, even if you don't necessarily have that much space, but realizing that everything is from God, right? And that, God willing, will be the final redemption. So there's a little insight. Again, these verses, we're not just talking about, he built it. It's not just a history thing. There's depth behind it. Just one more idea. The two errors. Also, commentary says also two different kind of hatreds that the non-Jews have to us during exile. One is ASEC. They're busy with us. We're busy. They're busy. They're constantly, they just have they're jealous or this or that. And then there's a hatred of sinna, just baseless hatred for no reason. We could be nowhere near them. They could be in a country where there's no Jews in it, right? But they just have hatred to us. And those are the two hatreds, right, that have been back and forth throughout history. So again, just to remind ourselves that there's depth behind it, even though it seems like just a mundane back and forth, right? But there's depth everywhere and depth behind here. Okay, let's move on. We're going to jump to chapter, the bottom of 132 to chapter 27. Now it speaks about Yitzchak wanting to give the blessing. So just right before it says that Esau was 40 years old and he took a wife, right? And then it says who his wife were, and it says they were bad for Yitzchak and Rivka. All right, why does the Torah have to tell us how old Esau was when he took a wife? So the Rashi says that Esau said, "My father was 40 when he took a wife. I'm 40. I'll be 40 when he took a wife." And the commentaries say that this is a typical kind of Esau behavior, and a behavior that we have to make sure that we don't have, is that Esau was very external. Oh, my father took a wife. It's not like he did adultery and he did, everything, but, my father, I'll wait till 40, like my father was 40 when he I'll take a wife at 40. Very external, very not internal. His religious, his relationship, what he thought was right and wrong was very external, what it looked like, not necessarily what was inside. And therefore, he did whatever, and we'll see that at the end of the Parsha, right? At the end of the Parsha, when Yitzchak and Rivka tell Yaakov to go to Rivka's brother Lavan to get a wife, right? And that's starting next week's Parsha. But at the end of this week's Parsha, he says, because we don't like the daughters of Canaan. Just like last week, Abraham didn't want the daughters of Canaan. We don't want the daughters of Canaan. So what does it say? The verse ends off. It says, Vayelech Esav el Yishmael. So Esav also went to Yishmael and took a wife from there. Again, he had many wives. He took wives. Oh, but when he saw that his parents wanted a wife for Yaakov from somewhere else, I'm going to take a wife from Yishmael also, not from these lands, right? Because Esau was a very external person. His Judaism, sort of say what we would call today, was external. It's what other people do, and there's nothing. It never seeped inside internally, and therefore it never changed him. And that's the difference between Yaakov, right? Yaakov internalized everything. Yosef, he sat down, he reflected on it, he digested it, he made it part of himself. Right? He ran around. Oh, okay, external, okay, I did it. Oh, good. Now I can just go back to my daily lives. I did something. Right? And that's just an important lesson, that we have to be more of a Yaakov, internalize things, right, than an Esau of just having things external and not internal. Okay, so this is, again, the next part is really almost at the end of the Parsha. I guess maybe next year we'll delve more into this part of the Parsha. I would just sort of get into this more of a overview. So this is going about the blessings. It says Yitzchak got old and his eyes got weak, and he called Esav to his son to a blessing. We spoke about why he called Esav. We gave an explanation of what we said before, why Esav and not Yaakov, and we're going to continue with that explanation. It says Rivka heard, right, and so she told Esav, she cooked Esav Yaakov food, right, and he brought it in, right. And if you go through the verses, where we're not going to go through it right now, right, but the first part is Yaakov going in. He said, "Oh, how are you back so quickly?" Because he told him to go out into the fields and there's a God. He says because God made things quick this time, right? And then he goes ahead. He asks him some. He says, "Please, Father, get up and eat." There's a whole back and forth, right? At one point in time, right? Yaakov is like a little. Yaakov is a little hesitant about this. He says, "Are you my son, Esav?" Right? Who are you? Yaakov said to his father, I'm Esav, your son. So there's a comma. We're on page 136, verse 19. He says, Anochi, I am. Esav, there's an Esav, but I'm your firstborn. Right? Sort of, I'm not going to get into that, how he said that. He says, Beni Maza, how did you? He said, Kikara Hashem alai ufanecha. God made this easier for me. Right? And then he says, come close to me that I could feel you, right? and he said, Vayigash, and he came and he gave him a kiss, right? And he felt him. And then there's a famous line. He said, Hakol kol Yaakov, right? Vayadami de Esav, right? It's the voice of Yaakov, but it's the hands of Esav, right? And what's it called? Where is that verse? Just looking for it. Um, So the verse is there. Akol call Yaakov vayadayim de Esav, the hands of Esav, because he felt him, and he realized he felt like Esav, right? Uh, so the question is, what does it mean? Akol call Yaakov. What does it mean? The voice of Yaakov, right? So he says because of the way he spoke. Because we see later when the Esav comes in, right? When Esav comes in, Yitzchak says, "Eat, my father." He speaks very grub. Yaakov spoke with respect, and he had God, and he spoke with in a godly manner, in a respectful way, right? But so he said, "This doesn't seem like Esav. Like what's going on over here?" So he felt him. Right, but they put the wool on his hands, right? That's what Rivka did, put wool on his hand that he could feel hairy, right? And he said, okay, I guess the hands are Esav. What should I do, right? But at the same time, verse 24, 22, that's where it says, Vayomar kol kol Yaakov yidayim Esav, verse 20, 22, the end of 22, right? That's where the verse is. And so just again, another important lesson that a Jew, a descendant of Yaakov, speaks with respect, right? Even if even if you're trying to impress someone else you talk with respect. You talk in a nice way, right? Not in a rough way. That's an important factor that Yitzchak recognized the difference, and he said, "1 second, I have to feel you because you don't sound like a Esau." Right? Because that's not how Esav spoke. Right? So then Esav got very upset. He said, "Please give me a blessing." Right? So Yaakov then realized that it says afterwards, God revealed to Yaakov what happened. It says, and he said, "Gam Barachia." He even though the blessing came in a trickery, I reaffirmed the blessing because now I realize what was going on, right? Because God finally revealed it to him. But he said, "I don't have a blessing. I gave it all to your brothers." He said, "Give me, please." Right? So he said, "Okay, you'll live on your sword, right? And when you're up, your brother's down. When your brother's down, then you have an opportunity to be up." And I'm not getting into the blessing right now. We don't have time for that. We're ready to be over schedule, over time. But and I appreciate you guys still sticking around. Just a few more minutes, right? Then it says after that, it says that Rivka told Yaakov that I think it's time for Yitzchak to get Yaakov to get a wife. Rivka told Yitzchak. He said, "Okay, but I don't like these girls over here. Send them somewhere else." And because Rivka knew that Esav wanted to kill Yaakov, he said he was going to kill Yaakov to be the only son, the blessing to go back to him. He was jealous and he was upset, so he wanted to kill his own brother, right? And then and what's it called again? And that's sort of takes us to the end of the parsha where it says that Yitzchak called Yaakov in and said, "Go, don't get girls from here. Go. You'll take the blessing of Abraham, right? Lazarecha for your children, right? And I'm giving you over there." And he sent them to Padan Aram to get a blessing. And it says, "Vayishma Yaakov el Aviv el Ima v'yelch Padan Aram," right? Yaakov listened and he went to Padan Aram, right? And that's the end of the parsha. And then that's like I said, it says afterwards, Esav went ahead and he also took a wife from these years, and that's what we spoke about earlier. Just want to end off with one thing, right? And just to bring out a point about the Torah, right? The depth of the Torah. So the verse says over here, second. So it speaks about Rivka, and he says that they are Rivka, the mother of Yaakov and Esau. 1 second. I can't find it, I'll stop. Give me 1 second. Okay, I can't find it right now, but basically the verse says that Rivka was the mother of
I think it's 28:5.
28:5. Yes, thank you. Perfect. There you go. You're hired. Next week you're giving the class. Thank you. All right, so the verse says like this: it says, "Vayishlach Yitzchak it's Yaakov v'yelech padan Aram, Lavan ben Besuel Aram Yachi Rivka, Ein Yaakov and Esav." Right, the brother he sent him to Padan Aram, right, to Lavan the son of Besuel, the Achi Rivka, the brother of Rivka, Ein Yaakov, the mother of Yaakov and Esav. And Rashi says something very interesting. Rashi says, Ein Yaakov and Esav, the mother of Yaakov and Esav. Rashi says, Eini yodea malam deinu. I don't know what this is teaching us. Because of course we know that Rivka is the mother of Yaakov and Esav. But the whole Parshah is telling us. At the beginning of the Parshah says that she gave birth to Yaakov and Esav. Right? There's a whole interaction between the Rivka loves Yitzchak and Yaakov, and Rivka was scared to sends Yaakov, and the whole interaction back and forth. We know that Rivka is the mother of Yaakov and Esav, so why does the Torah have to go ahead and tell us again, hey, what's it coming to tell us? What's it coming to teach me over here that it's saying that she was the mother of Yaakov? What's it? So telling us that she was a brother of Besuel and Lavan, okay. Telling us why he's sending over there. He's sending him over there to his uncle, right? So it's giving the liturgy of how he's their uncle, right? But saying that he's the mother of Yaakov and Esav, what does that have anything to do with this verse? And of course we know that she's the mother of Yaakov and Esav. What is the connection to this verse of saying why he's sending him to Padan Aram? So Rashi says, Eini yodea malam deinu. I don't know what this is teaching us. And every time I read this verse, it always gives me encouragement, right? It always reminds me that the Torah, just because I don't understand anything, doesn't mean to. Just because I don't understand something, doesn't mean to say that there might not be an answer. Doesn't mean to say that I shouldn't keep on learning, and it doesn't mean to say that I should throw it all away. Now we're talking about Rashi. Rashi was the father of the light of the exile. He's known as the light of the exile. We would be nowhere without Rashi. The commentary of Rashi on Chumash, the commentary of Rashi on the Talmud, right? The students of Rashi were the Baal Tosaf. So we'd be nowhere with Rashi's interpretation and explanation of the Talmud, of the Chumash, of so many other things, of Tanakh, right? And Rashi was not embarrassed to say, I don't know. I don't know. I don't have an explanation. Doesn't mean to say, I don't know, forget it, throwing this all away. I'm done with this, right? No, he sure maybe at the end of his life, or maybe another time, maybe he had some other explanation or this, and there's commentaries that expand on this and try to give different explanations. But it's an important thing. Number one is there's nothing wrong with saying I don't know. Number two is just because you don't know, you don't throw everything away. And number three is it's important to humble yourself to say that the Torah is so deep, right, that there's even things that Rashi wasn't able to understand. And of course, there's an explanation because the Torah has levels upon levels upon levels. And it's always encouraging when I read this, remind myself of these important lessons, right? To always encourage ourselves, not, number one, not to be embarrassed to say I don't know and to ask. And number two, to remind ourselves that the Torah is so deep, right? That if I don't know something, okay, I'll come back to it next year. Hopefully next year I'll have an explanation. It has happened many times that the next year when I learn it over again, I have a new insight, I have a new explanation, I have a new thing. Is it right or wrong? I'm not sure, right? Speak it over with other people. I look around other commentaries, but there's always depth upon depth of learning Torah. Thank you all for joining us tonight, and thanks for bearing